Thanks, man. I'm Rob. I'm an addict. I've got a helicopter overhead. Can we just take literally 45 seconds of a moment's silence just to pray? Thank you. Thank you. I ask God to try and get my ego out of the way and just to help me share honestly and kind of not hold back, really. It was really good listening to the previous speakers. I've got a terrible memory. Who was it? Nancy and John, thank you for that. I came in when Ronnie was sharing from Glasgow, and I've got internet problems, but I heard most of Nancy and John, and I heard some of Carl M from Dublin. Jason asked me to do a short share on here about a week or so ago for this event, and he said it was called Narcotics Anonymous Fellowship Awareness Day. And without knowing anything more than that, I just thought, my initial reaction was no thanks. No, thank you. I love you, but I don't really want to get sharing on that. And I mean, it didn't take much. I just spoke with Jason for a couple of minutes, and I realized the reason I said no was because of fear, because I was afraid, because I thought, why do I want to come on to a platform like this and be heard sharing about how I'm disgruntled with what happens in Narcotics Anonymous, in the fellowship, in the service structure? Do I really want people approaching me after this, talking about what I've said in a negative way? And I say that and I share that because that's what I've had on and off for the past 25 plus years, on and off. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then get into it. I know I've got about 25 minutes. I'm going to put my clock on so I won't go too far over or finish too soon. I came to Narcotics Anonymous in July 1987, and I got clean on August the 6th, 1987. And I was just a one white keyring guy on August the 6th till today. And because of where I come from and because of what we all know about active addiction, without going into a lot of detail, I kind of fell in love with NA pretty quickly. I kind of wanted to, I didn't particularly want to stop using. I didn't have a desire to stop using. I kind of wanted the pain to stop, the loneliness, the madness, the head stuff, and the behavior, and all the stuff I had to do to live my life, getting and using, finding ways and means. And I come to my early meetings and was made very welcome. I didn't know it at the time, but it was pretty unconditional. I liked it. I remember my first meeting very, very clearly, and the first few meetings I came to. That's very significant to me. Anything I share that's significant to me is because it still helps me today in my recovery. And to remember stuff that I was shown and heard 32, 30, 25, 20, 10 years ago even, it means a lot to me, so I hope it might help somebody else. What happened in my first meeting is what happens for a lot of us in meetings, but not all of us. I was made very welcome. I was treated like a piece of gold. It was a small fellowship where I was. 1987 in the UK, Narcotics Anonymous was a very small fellowship. And I was outside of London, which was a bigger fellowship. And the guys in my first meeting, in my early meetings, that had the big clean time, literally had 2.5 years. A couple of guys had 2.5. Another couple of guys had 2 years clean. Another guy had 6 months. And then after that, everybody had less than 90 days. And I was in that little pack. And the guys who were sticking, the 4 guys with the 2.5 years clean, they were impressive. They were almost unbelievable at first. When you've never met a clean addict, when you've never spent time with somebody who's used drugs like you have, maybe worse, maybe not as bad, but close, very similar, and they're living a new way, and they tell you they're not using anything, total abstinence. That was freaky. That was weird. But anyway, so I didn't come here wanting to get clean, but I wanted what I found in Narcotics Anonymous from my first meeting. And I don't just mean the women, but I do mean the friendship and the love that was shown. And I immediately got hope in my first meeting, in my early meetings. I got hope, and I got acceptance, and I got unconditional love, although I didn't know it at the time it was that. And I got that just a hand of friendship, you know, and it was a loving hug. It wasn't a handshake. It was a loving hug from pretty much most of the members in the room, which was really nice. So I got the ball rolling with, I got my head around the fact that you had to be clean to do these steps, to get the benefit of the program. I mean, I got a sponsor really quickly. I picked the guy with 2.5 years clean. He had the most clean time in my county, not my country, my county, which is Essex, and that was that's a big area. And you know, and I started working with him. My story is I've had 9 different sponsors in my clean time. I probably had the first 5 in the first 3 or 4 years. So it was quite rapid change, really. And what happened is when I got my 4th or 5th sponsor, whichever one he was, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 5th one, it was an American guy. He was over here with his work, and he bought the free literature with him. Now, when I got clean, we were using the 3rd revised anyway. So, but by the time, you know, a few years on, we were on the 5th edition. So I got the word. I was very involved from the start in service, in my home group, in area, in region. It wasn't called region then, but it was region, what region is today. And we already knew that we weren't supposed to be using this free literature. It was really bad, this 3rd edition. Really bad news, caused chaos in the fellowship in the States. There'd been a court case, it was all put to bed, and it was supposed to be gone, you know. So my initial contact, if you like, with this thing about free literature was that it was a terrible thing. It was just a terrible thing. To wind on a little bit, I started doing some research. And this is back in the early 90s. There was no internet. There was no mobile phones. Most people didn't have phones, landlines. But I did some research, and I started, I reached out to people in America. I spent time with people here that were people that had been to America and been to the fellowship in the States. And I used to spend time with Johnny, one of the founders here. And I just realized there was more to the service structure than I really wanted to know. I liked the idea that it was home group or group, area, region, world, with H&I and PI on the side. I can't say PR. But anyway, I like that idea. And I also like the idea that the further you progressed in service, the weller you got, the more time you had, the further you went in, area, region, world, I kind of like the prestige. You know, I like the idea that I had another label now as well as an NA member. I was also whether it was an ASR or an RSR or a H&I rep or a PI rep, and I was doing this kind of service in prisons, in public information. It was a fantastic time. But the difficulties came when I and my home group wanted to do the free literature. So back in the early 90s, my home group, which had been going for about, not that long really, about 6 or 7 years, started using the free literature. We were shortly taken off the where to find. And after that, I was removed from the area that I lived in as a contact number for the fellowship. And it was a sad time. It was a very difficult time. None of us really knew much about the traditions. Fortunately, at that point, we weren't confused with the concepts as well, but we didn't really know much about the traditions, really. A lot of us hadn't been through the steps. Fellowship in UK was, outside of London, I mean, it was growing very slowly. And it's still just taking off now today in many places. To come more up to date, I've walked away from meetings a few times and come back. I've not used, I've stayed clean, obviously. I haven't walked away and gone mad or just thought I'm just going to use or anything like that. I feel I've got a tremendous gift from our program, freedom from active addiction, meaning freedom from the self-obsession, the madness, not just the drugs. That's just the start. You know, you've got to get freedom from the drugs to take the steps. So I've got an awful lot from the program. I've always felt compelled to come back and be involved. And every time I've come back and I've been involved, I've slid back into wanting to do the free literature and wanting to sponsor people and wanting to take the books into prisons. And, you know, the idea of every prisoner in every cell having a basic text next to them, that's how it should be. I can't see how anybody could disagree with that. The idea of every newcomer walking in the door, whether they're smashed out their head, whether they're 15 or 65 years old, whether we're never going to see them or not, give them a meetings list, give them a basic text, and give them some phone numbers. They're the 3 most valuable things that we can give a newcomer. If you give a newcomer a little fold up basic text with just the 10 chapters, that's our programming there, and that's our best literature, you know. Recently, we've had a little thing on our UK's celebrating 40 years of Narcotics Anonymous at the moment, and there's a little thing on the history page, the NA UK history page, and yesterday or the day before, it's all been lovely on there. Everybody's catching up with people they haven't seen for years and reminiscing and photos and lovely stuff. And some guy, because it's a history page, some guy puts a picture on there of the Grey Book and says, anybody know what this is? And, you know, it's a history page. And I tell you, man, it blew up. It blew up. You got people shouting, and you can tell they're shouting, even though it's messaging, and you can feel it. And it's like, that's illegal, that's illicit. Why are you putting that up? That's killing people. You baby blues. All this tirade started coming out, not from loads of people, but only from a small few, from a very, very small few. But the intensity is there, you know. And I used to love, I genuinely did, I didn't love it, but I didn't mind getting in the ring with people in the early years. And I mean, I'm 32 years clean now, and I just think, I love NA, but I don't need it. My life doesn't depend on it like it used to. I love it. It's a fantastic thing to be involved in. And we have a gift. You know, like Jimmy Kinnon said, I quote the literature a lot. I quote some of our founder members, old timers, if you like. whatever you want to call them, predecessors. I quote some of them guys like Greg Pierce a lot, and Jimmy Kinnon, and I just think, you know, we've been given a gift that it's not for everybody. One addict helping another, you know. Our fifth tradition talks about that any addict can stop using, find a new way of life, and any addict can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way of life. It's three things. And I've seen thousands of addicts come to NA and stop using. And I've seen hundreds and hundreds of addicts come to NA and stop using and lose the desire to use. I haven't seen that many come to NA and get all three, and get the stop using, lose the desire, and get the new way of life. Because the new way of life for me is only truly experienced through the spiritual experience or the spiritual awakening of the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. I mean, I love it that people can have a great recovery just doing the steps, maybe going through them over and over again. I think that's fantastic. That is not my experience. I love Narcotics Anonymous. To just do the steps and not dig in and really try and get everything I can out of our program is like buying cheap gear and then going back and buying more cheap gear when somebody is selling better up the road. I would always do the extra journey. I would always pay a bit more for better quality. Why settle for less in NA? I mean, I came in here at 26 years old, and before I was 27, I knew that I wanted to stay here, not necessarily for life, not necessarily for decades, but I knew I wanted to give this a go. And it was going to be long term. It wasn't going to be a fight. It wasn't going to be a flash in the pan. And what happened for me is, with a few years clean and having gone through the steps, I lost my way. And I think I lost my purpose. And I was sponsoring people, and I was trying to do service, and I was caught up in a lot of controversy with the literature. But it really wasn't until I got my fifth sponsor, and he opened up the traditions with me, for me and with me, that my recovery changed again. And at about 4 or 5 years clean, whatever I was at that time, I've never looked back from then. That's 26, 27 years ago. I have not looked back since that day. What I mean is, I love NA, and I've never doubted our program. I find the conflict in the fellowship really hard to deal with. When I prayed and asked to remove my ego and let me just share what I need to share, I've got no clue what I'm going to say. I don't like listening to people doing canned talks, and so I don't do them, you know. And I know I'm on a time limit, and I'm really happy with that. And my fear of not wanting to do this through fear was not the reason I could not do it. You know, if I had see, what's happened for me is my home group today uses a 6th edition, and we have about 10 or a dozen members in my home group, and we do 2 meetings a week, and we do a book study, a basic text study on a Sunday night, and we do a step, tradition, and a topic study and discussion on a Thursday night, and we have group conscience meetings regular, and we go to our local area, and our GSR represents our group. He doesn't go as a member of area, he goes as a member of our group, representing our group, participating in area. And he knows, or she knows, that this is how we do things in our group. We go by the traditions. We do group conscience. So we had a tiny little dabble with using the free literature about 2.5 years ago in my home group. Because social media, all the information is out there. You can't stop it now. That's the other thing about NORS. They had the ear and the eye of the fellowship to themselves for 30 years plus. Newsline, NA Way magazine, all the other publications and correspondence, all the RSRs and the ASRs and it's the upline, but it's supposed to be whatever it is. And they had that to themselves for over 30 years. And in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, it's been blown wide open, hasn't it, with social media? And thank God for that. More and more people are realizing now it's not as all as it should be. The saddest thing for me is, I mean, there are meetings in my area that have not been listed in the meeting list for over 25 years. And they still operate, they still function, they do three or four meetings a week, they still sponsor people, they still do their meetings, they come visit other meetings from time to time, but they are not welcome at our local area, and they're not welcome in a lot of meetings. And I've experienced that myself. I've been to meetings and been told, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And I've been told directly, you are not welcome here. That should never happen in Narcotics Anonymous. You know, I've left meetings, got in my car and cried as I've drove myself home with what I've experienced. Now, part of that is because I am an oversensitive, delicate little petal of an addict, but also part of that is fucking atrocious behavior. And obviously I've been somebody who has treated people badly and behaved badly myself. Definitely no angel, made plenty of mistakes. Hopefully I'm not that person today. But when Jason asked me to share, I didn't have a clue what to share on. When I listened to Ronnie, was it Ronnie? Yeah, Glasgow. And he was talking about using the Grey Book, using the third edition in Scotland, Glasgow. And the fear. When we looked at it 2.5 years ago, and the guys really wanted to do it, because new people, they love it, don't they? They just think, give new people books, give it away. And I invited somebody in who told my home group what would happen if we used the free literature. And he put the fear of God in them. He put fear in the room. And I had to agree with him. And I had to say, this is what will happen. You will be ostracized. You will be treated differently in other meetings. Our home group will come off the meeting list. There will be a furore. And my home group then decided, put it away. Carry on with the 6th edition, go back to how it was. And I personally was absolutely fine with that, because I'm not going to sit in a meeting with 32 years clean when the next person has got 10, and then the next one's got 5, and then everybody else is under 5, and take the brunt and the flack for everything that happens in that meeting. And I've had years of that, years. Anyone who's got a bit of time, anyone who does a lot of service, we know that in some areas, the target on your back gets bigger and bigger. That's just how it is. This share was never going to be our lovely and fluffy NAs. That's partly why I didn't want to do it, because our fellowship and our new way of life is about life on life's terms and dealing with conflict. Now, me, I don't like conflict, even though I've learned a lot about dealing with it better these days. I don't run as quickly as I used to, and I don't run as fast as I used to, but I still don't like it. It's not something that's just off the bat for me. And for me not to have adversity and conflict in my life today, I mean, I used to listen to Grateful Dave, and he said about controversy. He said the most controversial thing about an addict is being clean. An addict not using drugs, that's controversial. And don't we know it? Don't we know it? When we feel it in here, when we feel it, all them feelings rushing around through the blood, through the head, through the heart pumping, and we feel everything. And some of it's frightening. And a lot of it's beautiful, of course. A lot of it's beautiful. And that's why we stay, and that's why we continue. The beauty far outweighs the bad, the negative. You know, the joy far outweighs the discomfort. But that's part of our new way of life. I think I'm going to leave it there, because otherwise I'm just looking for things to share. All right, I'll do that classic. I'm going to end on this. So, it's going to be another 10 minutes. No, seriously, I'm going to end on this, and it'll be about 3 minutes. I researched our history. It's called due diligence. It's what lawyers do. It's what solicitors do. Due diligence is when you dig in deep, research our history, research our traditions, and find out if this is just for if you love NA. This isn't for everyone. A lot of people here are just clean for the day, just passing through, and that's fine. But for me, as somebody who loves NA, it's like loving a woman, a person. I want to know everything about her, her past, her childhood, everything. I'm fascinated with her. I love her. My wife. I'm the same with NA. So I just say, please do your due diligence. Somebody else said earlier about sheeple. We joke about it, but it's sad, isn't it? NORS Incorporated have not got our best interests at heart. They just haven't. They need to make money. They turn over millions every year, millions. They travel the world. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm really not. They're not bad people. They're great people. But they are not Narcotics Anonymous. Our fellowship, our meetings, our members, we are Narcotics Anonymous. When I sit in a meeting and see the new person and get with them after the meeting and go for a coffee, that is pure NA. And that's what gives us the joy. And that's what gives us the ability to live our lives outside of the fellowship as well and experience everything and just have a good life. I think I've took my time. It'd be great if we get time for Q&A at some point. If not, I'll try and get back in the ridiculous early hours in the UK when you do it at the end. Thanks for listening. Thank you very much.